Okay, so first of all, a warm welcome to all of you. I hope all of you are able to hear me. So welcome to the third Ask Me Anything session regarding MBA CET 22 preparation strategy. So in this particular session, what we're going to do is, of course, we had floated a form and I've got a couple of questions through that. So we're going to discuss those questions. So I think we have about 15, 16 odd questions that I've received. And I'm going to take those questions. I will take you through the questions that students have asked, and I will give my responses to that. And then because the session is being streamed live on YouTube, whatever questions that you guys ask in the chat window, I'll be able to answer those as well. Okay, so feel free to drop in your questions. But first of all, I'll finish all the questions that I've received on the Google form, and then I will take the questions from the YouTube chat window. Okay, so let's get started. And the first thing that we have today is, of course, I didn't sort them in any particular order. These are sort of first come, first serve basis. So whatever questions that I got after the last session that we had done about 2 to 3 weeks back, we had done a session which was second in the AMA series. After that, whatever questions that I've got, I have included those here. Okay, so this is the first question that I got, which was how to manage time during the test. Okay, it's a very good question. Now, there are two things that you need to keep in mind. One is how you pace yourself. Okay, so pacing yourself is very important when you're taking any test. So you need to have clarity in terms of how you are going to approach the test. Okay, now if the CET comes to be a sectional test, which means you have QA, LRDI, QA, LR, verbal, and abstract. Okay, so these 4 sections. If it comes in a sectional format, then you need to have strategy in terms of which section you're going to attempt first, right? So what is the order that you're going to follow in terms of attempting your sections? And then what is the time that you're going to spend on each of those sections? Okay, so you need to be clear in terms of, okay, let me spend maybe 20 minutes on abstract reasoning, right? So if it comes to be sectional, then say AR, how much time? Then VA, how much time? Then QA, how much time? And then LR, how much time? Okay, so figure out how much time you're going to spend and then try to stick to that. That is going to be the best thing that you can do. Now, if it comes to be a jumbled paper, okay, so all 200 questions, if in no particular order of section they appear, then you have to pace yourself as 30 minutes, 40 questions, right? So that strategy of 30-minute, 40 question that we keep discussing, that is something that you need to aim for. So every 30 minutes, you try to reach to an attempt of 40 questions. Okay. So from 1 to 40, right? And within that, you might have skipped a couple of questions, which is okay. But as long as you're reaching 40 questions or so, I think you should be fine. Okay. So that is how you need to strategize your attempt. And always keep some room for corrective action, right? A lot of times what happens is students fall in love with the question, so they keep solving it, and they don't realize how much time they have spent. So you should know at the back of your mind as to how much time you have spent. And if you get stuck somewhere, you need to get out of that, right? So if you have a nice LR caselet and you're finding it very interesting to solve, okay, you're solving it, but somewhere you got stuck and you've spent, let's say 2-3 minutes on it, 5 minutes on it, maybe 7 minutes on it. There's no point spending more time because you might not be able to crack it. Okay, so do your rough work such that you can maybe come back to that question later if time permits. But at that point of time, you might want to just leave that question and move forward. Okay, so leave that room for correction. Okay, always have some sort of a buffer that if you leave a particular question because it is difficult, or rather you should leave a question because it is difficult. Okay, there's no point spending too much time on the difficult ones. Second question, is it okay to focus on 3 sections, LR, English, visual, and overall QADI section? Okay, so a lot of these questions, you will see that the framing is not great because I retain the way questions were sent to me. So I think the person is trying to ask, is it okay to focus on 3 areas and not really focus on QADI? Okay, I think that is the understanding that I have of the question. So my answer to this is yes, it is possible to do well in CET if you are good at 3 sections. Okay, but then your 3 sections that you have mentioned, LR, English, and visual, all of them have to be extremely good so that you get very good score there. Okay, see, if you're deciding to not focus on a particular area, then also you should do as much as you can in terms of preparation. So don't say that, okay, I'll not do the entire QA, right? It's not a good idea to do that. Or I'm not going to do the entire DI. Maybe there are some questions there which are going to be easy on that day. Okay. So last year, for example, at least in the slot in which I was, QA was fairly straightforward, right? On the other hand, the LR was difficult. So then if you are somebody who had not done QA well, then it becomes a struggle in such papers, right? Because you're not practiced it at all. So even though questions are easy, you're not able to solve them. Okay. So it doesn't really make sense. That is why don't drop an area completely. I would say do as much as you can. And I agree to an extent that, okay, you can focus on 3 areas because it's still about 150 questions. So 150 questions of those 3 areas. And then if you do, let's say another few questions from QA, DI, I think you'll have a sizable number of attempts, right? But yes, to have that 3-section strategy, which I also have, by the way, your 3 sections have to be very strong. So for me, the 3 sections are actually QA, verbal, and abstract reasoning, right? So that 125 is my focus. LR is like a secondary thing, especially in CET, because of the caselets, right? So non-caselet stuff I will do first, but caselets I'll sort of keep it for the end. Okay, I'll not waste too much time in the beginning. But then because the accuracy in the other 3 areas is good, I'm able to score well. What will be the upcoming exam pattern? Will it be 2020 pattern or 21 pattern? Can we predict this? Unfortunately, we can't predict this. So even last year, they had mentioned that it is going to be a sectional format, but they changed it at the last moment. Okay, so when people face the test, they got to know that it is going to be a jumbled thing. Most likely, if you ask me, I think it should be the earlier format because they had followed it for a long period of time. I think so. I'm going to consider last year as an aberration. It's something that they should not have done, but they did it. So my gut feeling would be that it will be the earlier pattern, but then you never know with CET, right? So you have to be prepared for the 21 format as well. Okay, so you can't really take any chance. Be prepared for both the formats, the sectional format as well as the jumbled format. Then there is a generic question, how to increase speed. Okay, so see, speed is a function of a couple of things, right? And one of them is definitely a lot of practice, right? So how much practice you have done. If you look at a particular question, if you have practiced it enough number of times, you would know how to get to the answer faster, right? The second thing to build your speed, right, is to think of what I call alternate approach. Okay, so what is alternate approach? There could be some questions that you can solve without actually solving it, right? So you use options and you reach the answer, or you see the question and you see, okay, all the numbers are multiples of 7. So there is a high chance that the answer is also a multiple of 7. So let me go with a particular answer option. Or if you make some assumptions, right, which are non-traditional assumptions in particular questions. So there would be some alternate approaches to some of the questions in quant. Okay, so knowing those alternate approaches will always help. And that will again come from practice. The more you practice, you start realizing, oh, this question can be solved in this manner. This question has a better shortcut. So shortcuts and tricks are very limited. Okay, they are, to be honest, they are overrated to an extent because shortcuts and tricks are applicable to a certain set of questions only. Okay, there's a particular question, and for that question there is a shortcut. There are no shortcuts for all 200 questions that you are going to see on the paper. Keep that in mind. Out of 200, possibly there could be some 30-35 questions maybe where there could be a shortcut. Okay, somebody could reach to that answer much faster. Barring those questions, rest of it is going to be pure muscle memory as to you have seen a similar question in the past, how quickly you can solve it. Okay, so just to give you an example, let's say I ask you a very simple question. Okay, what is 99 square? Now, the person who knows a shortcut will do something called there's a method which is used in speed calculation to calculate 99 into 90, right? So you take a difference from 100, then you multiply these and you get 9801, right? So this is your final answer. Now somebody can do the same question as 99 square is 100 minus 1 square. Okay, fair enough. A minus b the whole square, a square minus 2ab plus b square. Now somebody can also do this as 11 into 9 into 11 into 9. right? And actually calculate it, right? Somebody can even do 99 into 99. So sit and multiply, okay, 9 into 9 and so on. Now, this multiplication could also be done faster. So who will get there faster is somebody who knows this shortcut. But then even if you don't know it, if you know how to do this, you should still be able to solve this question in about 15 to 20 seconds. It should not take you more than that. But somebody who knows this shortcut will possibly get there in about 2 or 3 seconds, right? So there could be some areas where you have an advantage because you know a shortcut, but a lot of areas will be there where you don't know a shortcut. But if you're able to do the standard method fast, you are still okay. Okay. So work on getting the standard approach ingrained in your head that, okay, this is how you do it. And then try to see where you can save time. And the third thing in increasing speed is looking at your rough sheet. Okay. I always tell students to look at your rough sheet once you're done with your mock paper. And it will tell you a lot of things. It will tell you what are the problem areas, where you are spending a lot of time. Are you writing things unnecessarily? Because the moment you switch your focus towards arriving at the answer in your head, that is when the real improvement in speed will happen. Because otherwise, everybody sits with a pen and a paper and they start solving things. But once you read a question, you have to ask yourself, do I really need to put my pen down on the paper to reach to the answer for this question? Or can I try to do it in my head? Okay. For example, let's take something from profit loss discount, right? If a particular seller sells currently at whatever price, if he increases the price by so much amount, he's able to make so much profit, etc. Now, you always need to ask yourself, once I solve this in the beginning, when you're learning it for the first time, after that, how can I solve it in my head, right? What are the assumptions that I need to make? So should I start with 100 or should I not start with 100 as CP? So what are the instances where assumption is valid or it is invalid? If I don't start with 100, what is the approach, right? So working with equations, can I write the initial equation in my head? The answer is yes in most of the cases. But unfortunately, most of the students will start writing it from step 1, whereas they should start writing on paper somewhere around step 2 or step 3. Okay, so people waste time unnecessarily most of the times. And if you're able to find it, you will have tremendous improvement in your speed. How to increase score in vocab and grammar questions? So firstly, grammar is still in your control. So I will talk about the thing that is largely in your control than the thing which is beyond your control. So to fix your grammar, just work on grammar rules, right? So there are some areas that are tested a lot when it comes to grammar. Subject verb agreement, parallelism. So these things you have to know. There is no escaping this thing that you can't say that I don't know subject verb agreement or I don't know parallelism. It's a very wrong way to look at things, right? So instead, get your grammar rules in place. Okay? You don't have, I mean, if you break down some simple rules, etc., into multiple things, etc., you will still have not more than 60, 70, 80 grammar rules that you need to remember. Remember all of them, remember examples of them, and you're fine for grammar. Okay, you don't have to worry at all about anything in grammar then. Vocab, the problem, unfortunately, is that even if you do 1,000 words, okay, let's say over the next 2 months, you learn 1,000 new words. There is a possibility that you will get something that you have never seen. So vocab preparation is not exhaustive. Grammar preparation is fairly exhaustive. So that is why I would say focus more on fixing your grammar first. And whatever reading that you're doing in general, whatever new words that you're coming across, write them down in a separate book, keep reading that book every now and then, and you should be okay for vocab. But there is always a possibility that you're going to see something on the paper that you're not encountered earlier. And at that point of time, you have to make a choice, you have to answer something and move forward. Okay. So grammar, as I said, exhaustive, focus more on that. Vocab, non-exhaustive. Still, I will focus, but not overdo it. Okay, let's move ahead. So another question. So the student has written, I'm a graduate student, so I'm not getting much time to prepare for CET. My grad exam is ending on 10th May. How can I prepare seriously after 10th May to crack CET? I would say you can't wait for 10th May to begin your preparation. Okay, so ideally your preparation should have started much earlier if you're thinking of CET of this year. Let's say you're not done anything. I would still recommend that, see, your college exam is important. So there's no denying that. And you have to prepare for college exams really well. Make sure that you get fantastic graduation score. Figure out, are you able to take out maybe 1 or 2 hours a day for CET preparation? If you're not able to take 2 hours, 1 hour a day. Still plan something, right? That you have around 60 days. How are you going to use them? So maybe just write down that, okay, these are the topics that I'm going to do on this particular day. And an hour a day to learn the concepts and to solve maybe 10, 15, 20 odd questions possible. Do that and finish it off, right? And then if time permits, you should take a few mocks, because after 10th, you have time, but then the point is you will miss out on opportunity of these, whatever the next 14 odd days that we have as we're discussing it right now. I think this question had come up for the last session, but then unfortunately I had missed that. So after 10th May, you'll still have time. It's not that you will not have, but I will still say that maybe an hour a day, if you're able to take out, I think do that. After that, then spend as much time as you can. Okay, so I don't want you to lose out on any opportunity, and that is why I'm saying about 1 to 2 hours a day. But if you think that it is not possible at all, you're not going to get any time, then just drop it. Okay, you should still be fine. After 10th May, you are going to have maybe another 30 plus maybe 14 odd days, let's say 44, 45 days. Great if CET gets postponed, so you'll be happier, I think, in that case. But a lot of people will not be happy. But yeah, I think you can still afford to not do anything till 10th of May. It's an individual call. I think leave that up to you. Okay. What's ideal accuracy percentage and number of attempts to get a good score? Okay. So this, I have an answer to this question. So ideal accuracy percentage when it comes to CET based on experience has been around 80 to 85%. Okay. So always aim to be in this range or more than this. Okay. I mean, if you're above 85, I think great, nothing like it. But 80 to 85% is a very good accuracy to be in. So if you're attempting 100 questions, you should get at least 80 correct. If you're attempting 150 questions, you should get at least 120 correct. Okay. So that is how you have to think about it. Because see, if you look at topper score, last year topper was what, 165, 166, right? So if assuming that the topper has attempted all the 200 questions, you would realize that the topper's accuracy is north of 80%, right? Scoring more than 160. So aim for that. That is the ideal. And I see a lot of people try to have similar accuracy across all the sections. It's not going to happen. Okay, so there will be some areas where you will not be able to push it. As much as possible, try to push it. But then you need to figure out where can you compensate. So for example, if somebody has in AR, let's say 90 to 95% accuracy, right? And in LR, maybe let's say your accuracy is 70 to 75%, right? You might still be able to find a balance and reach about 80 to 85 combined these two sections. So if I'm taking AR plus LR, right? And out of 25 questions, let's say I have got 90% accuracy. So I'm about 22. Out of 75 questions in LR, let's say I get 70% accuracy, right? So I'm somewhere around 52, 53, right? Something like that. So 52, 53 plus if I'm getting 22, right? I'm getting to around 75, okay? Which is still lower, slightly lower than what you're aiming for. But you need to find that balance. Okay. It can be anything, any combination, but as long as you find it, you should be okay. So don't try to have similar accuracies across all 4 sections because it's a very difficult thing to do. Find the balance. Okay. Overall, it should have 80-85%. I think I don't see why somebody should be around 60% or 70%, because in that case, what you're doing is you are over attempting. You are attempting more than your potential. And that is why you're making errors. Okay, so keep that in mind. My mock scores are constant. I think I'm unable to analyze mocks properly. Scores are in the range of 100 to 110. Please provide suggestions. Firstly, I have made video which is there on this channel as to how you analyze mocks. So please go through it because it requires a fair bit of discussion. To keep it very short, I would say solve the entire paper once again. Look at the approaches that you have taken uh, and the official solution. See which one is better, because there could be some areas where your solution is better. There could be some areas where the official solution is better. So compare that and learn from it. Secondly, the questions that you're not able to solve, right? So here, for example, there are about 90 questions that you're not getting correct. Figure out what are these 90 questions? What is the composition? So are there parajumbles in this, syllogisms, caselets, math, DI? What is it exactly? And then see, out of the topics that you list, which make these 90 questions, work on those topics, right? So if you realize, okay, parajumbles is a problem, start working on parajumbles, do 30-40 questions of parajumbles before you take the next mock. So whatever time period that you have between one mock and the other, always use it constructively, right? You have to work on your improvement areas, and then only you will see some improvement in your score. Okay, so go through the mock analysis video and then work on the improvement areas. How do I revise all the topics? Since I keep forgetting older ones as I do newer ones. So welcome. So that's a reality. Everybody goes through this, every single student. Okay. See, if we don't revise something on a periodic basis, we are going to forget it. Okay. Because when you read it for the first time, or when you learn it in a classroom session or an online session, your memory is fresh, so you're able to recall it. As time progresses, you will start forgetting things. The only way to tackle this is what is called spaced repetition. Okay. Now, what is spaced repetition? So spaced repetition is basically after a certain periods of time, you go through that stuff again. So let's say today I have studied a particular topic. Okay, let's say I've studied permutation combination. Then after another 14 days, or maybe let's say 3 weeks, I'm going to look at the same topic, go through the basic concepts, go through some of the questions that I would have solved, etc., or the formula book that I have made for myself. Then after another, say 2 or 3 weeks, again you go through it. So a better thing to do is like a 7, 14, 21 kind of a thing. So if I do a topic today, maybe after 7 days, just go through the formula once again. Then after another 14 days, you go through the formula again. Then another 21 days, you go through the formula once again. So do spaced repetition. I think that's the only way to remember things for a longer period of time. The other is doing the topic so well that you don't have to do it again as much as possible. So if you do a particular topic today, let's say permutation combination, try to grasp the basic concepts really well. Okay. And then write down the formula somewhere so that you can refer to it, because you will not get time to go through all the concepts again. It's not going to happen. So better to write down the core concepts and formulae in a book and then keep referring to that book again and again. Which quant topics to focus more on? So mostly if you look at the CET composition, if you focus on numbers, algebra, and the entire arithmetic, more or less you should be fine. Because see, arithmetic takes care of even your data interpretation. So that is one advantage of doing arithmetic, which is everything that you have: percentage, profit loss, SICI, time, speed, distance, time and work, and all those things. In algebra, linear equations, quadratic equations, because this also appears in quantitative comparisons. And then numbers, because you'll have a lot of calculation based questions related to number properties, HCF, LCM, indices, surds, and all those things. So in numbers, you can either include, or let me write it separately, indices, so laws of indices and logarithms. So at least this much, I think everybody should do. And those of you planning to do everything, great. But all of you should do at least, this is like a bare minimum thing when it comes to quant. Currently, I'm scoring 85 to 95. What score should be considered good in a mock? Okay, so I'll show you a table and you can take a screenshot and keep that table with you. It's there on the blog as well. So those of you who haven't signed up or who haven't seen my blog, please have a look at crackingcet.com. It's a blog that I write on. It's nearing almost 2 lakh views now. So I'll be very happy if more people subscribe to and read the articles on the blog. So the table will tell you what score will give you what percentile roughly in an actual CET. See, what happens is when you take a sim CET or say mock of anybody, right? There are a whole lot of players in the market. I'm sure there are students of other institutes who are attending this session. Whatever mock that you must be taking, when you look at your score and the percentile that the coaching institute would have given, you will realize that because that percentile is calculated on a limited set of people, it is slightly off reality. And that is why it is always better to look at the actual test scores versus percentile in the CET. Okay, so you can refer to this table, and I think that's a good reference point. But give me some time, I'll come to that table so that everybody can see it. Is it worth taking CET for non-Maharashtra candidate? The answer is a resounding yes. Okay, so is it worth taking CET for non-Maharashtra students? Absolutely. It's just that the number of seats are less. Okay, that I completely agree. In every college, you have 15% seats reserved for all India category. And when I say all India, it includes Maharashtra as well. So the advantage that Maharashtra students have is that they have stake on not only the Maharashtra seats, but they can also apply under all India. But somebody who's not from Maharashtra can put a claim on the all India seats only. And there are 15% of the seats in every college which are reserved for all India. Okay, so is it worth it? Absolutely. So don't hesitate and take CET. Okay, next set of questions. Can you please provide actual past year's papers of Maharashtra CET? The answer to this is no. And the reason for this is whatever you see in the market also. Okay, I know that there are books in the market who advertise as past year's papers of CET. Please note that these are memory-based papers and they are not actual papers. They are not actual. So a lot of times you will see that what they have done is, so see what happens is when mentors like us take CET, or there are a whole lot of other coaching institutes, book publishers, they will send people to take the test. Now, sometimes what these people do is they will just remember the questions and come back and reproduce. Now, when you do that, there are possibilities of errors. That's number one. Second is if they're not able to remember the exact question, they will change the values. If they're not able to remember that also, and if they just remember the topic, they will just put some random question and say that, okay, this is still fine because there was a series question. I don't remember that series question, but there was a series question. And they will reproduce sort of a paper which looks like CET. So whatever books are available in the market, the papers are not exact CET papers. Okay, CET paper is not released in the public domain the way it happens for CAT, and that is why the papers are not accurate. So that is why you will not find these papers in my IMS dashboard, because we will never put something that we are not 100% confident of. What was the all India cutoff marks for JBIMS in the recent years? I couldn't find consistent data on this. So typically it has been around 99.98. Okay, typically. Okay, last year it was 99.95. See, it used to be up because they were accepting multiple exams that time. So for all India, they used to accept CET, CAT, ZAT, ATMA, MAT, all of these exams. So this was earlier. But current situation, because they're accepting only CET, CAT, and CMAT. So people who used to earlier take ATMA and MAT and used to get high scores and then used to get the all India seat, now because those exams are down, the cutoff actually has decreased a little bit. Okay, so that is why you will see. So last year, and even of course the delay was another reason as to why it happened, but it was 99.95 last year as cap round 2 cutoff. Okay, I'll show you the exact table also for reference. My scores is between 110, 120. First of all, that's a good score. From last 2 days, I was ill, and last 20 days, I was ill and wasn't able to do much. What should be my mock strategy? How should I get to 130, 140 from here? Okay, similar strategy as I told somebody else, which is if you're getting a score of 110, right, what are the remaining 90 questions? Figure those out. What topics are they from? Work on those topics, and then you will start seeing some improvement. Okay, the mock analysis definitely is an exercise that everybody has to do, whether you're scoring 110 or a 150 or a 90, right? So mock analysis you definitely have to do with the same rigor, and don't get complacent if you start scoring higher. It's a very commonly seen mistake that people get a very high score in mocks and then they're like, fine, I'm there. But you should never stop taking mocks, first of all. And you should always be, I would say, somebody who thinks that I'm not going to do it, because then only you will have the hunger to get better, right? Okay. Next questions. I'm having a very hard time solving LR within the time limit, and I end up with 15 to 20 unattempted questions. How do I end this vicious cycle? Now, I don't know whether you're talking about 15 to 20 questions in LR, because if you're talking about LR and you are not able to attempt around 15 to 20 questions, then you're essentially attempting 55 to 60 questions, which if you're doing is a very, very good attempt in LR. So I don't know why you need to end this. Maybe the reason could be that you are not scoring that well in other 3 areas, which could be a possibility, which might not be true also. So you have to figure out how you are in the 3 areas, because if you're good in those 3 areas, I think this is a fantastic place. But if you're not good in those 3 areas, then definitely you might want to work on bridging this gap. I believe those 15-20 unattempted questions in LR are going to be caselets. And that is why start working on more caselets. So do more practice when you are sitting at home, solving questions. Try to force yourself to come up to the answer very, very quickly, right? So writing cases very fast, making sure that you are remembering those conditions in your head as much as possible so that you don't have to refer to the screen again and again. All of that you will have to practice. Okay. So, but otherwise, I think if you're talking about 15 to 20 questions overall or in LR, it's still okay, provided you are good in the other 3 areas. What to do if I secure admission in Wellinger PGDM right now through CMAT and later also secure admission for Wellinger MMS seat via CET, considering CMAT score? Is the shift possible from PGDM to MMS in Wellinger? Unfortunately, I don't have answer to this question. I don't know the institute policy in this particular matter, and you can check with the institute. I would say it's a far-fetched possibility, and even if it happens, when it happens, you can take that decision. I think it's too early to even start worrying about something like this as a possibility. Okay. See, if you're talking about moving to some other college, it is always possible. So if you want to move from, say, Dalmia PGDM to, say, a Sydenham MMS, right? You can definitely do that. In which case you lose the money that you would have paid for your PGDM. Okay, whatever, maybe the first year fees or first semester fees that you would have paid. A lot of people do it, especially if you're getting a far better institute. Now, Wellinger PGDM to Wellinger MMS technically is not a very big upgrade. Okay, it's a very small improvement. The only improvement that is happening is your return on investment, because MMS fees are slightly lower compared to the PGDM fees. The placements are exactly the same because students sit together. So I don't know, and maybe the advantage of that you're getting a Mumbai University degree compared to a PGD. So you can take that decision once it happens by talking to the institute, but I don't have an answer to that question at this point of time. I suggest that you don't worry about this possibility. How to keep oneself motivated? I am unable to sit for mock throughout for a long time. See, one is you need to practice a lot of things offline. And because see, when you don't have the habit of sitting at one place for 2.5 hours, I'm not saying mock, I'm saying in general, if you're not used to sitting at one place for 2.5 hours, you will always find it difficult to replicate that in a mock. So how do you build this habit? I would say that whenever you are studying, first of all, start studying for at least an hour. Okay, so let's say you start today. So today, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., I have sat and I've studied. I didn't see my phone. I switched off all electronic gadgets and I was just studying. Then you do this for, let's say, 4 or 5 days. Then you make it 75 minutes. You do it for another 4 or 5 days. Then you make it 90 minutes, another 4 or 5 days. Then you make it 105 minutes. So that way you increase your stamina. Okay. And then you will see that, okay, it's fair comfort to sit for 2.5 hours. Another advice that I have for everybody is get used to sitting at one place for 3 hours. That should be your aim. Because when you take the actual CET, you always go at least half an hour earlier for the paper, half an hour, 45 minutes in most cases. So I would be somebody who can sit for 3.5 hours without breaking a sweat. I should have like very strong focus and so on, no fatigue, even if I'm sitting for 3.5 hours. So my mental prep has to be for 3.5 hours rather than 2.5 hours. Okay. So practice it. I think that is one thing. The motivation aspect of it, nobody can help you. The self-motivation is the only thing that works. So you need to be very clear as to why you're doing it. If somebody has forced you to take CET, you will never have the motivation. If you have taken the decision and if you're clear that, okay, this is the XYZ college that I'm aiming for, you will find your motivation. How to prepare when I'm weak in 2 subjects? First of all, it's not a good strategy because 2 subjects will give you a coverage of either 75 questions or 100 questions or 125 questions maximum. Even if you attempt 125 questions max, possibly you're looking at a score of 100, right? So that is why being weak in 2 subjects is not a good idea. So you can be weak in one area, moderate in one, and very good in 2, which is still okay. But then weak in 2 is going to be a problem. So out of 2 subjects, figure out which one is something that you can improve on and maybe focus more on that. The 4th section can still be something which is an area of improvement, but do the bare minimum at least, right? So as I said, if you're thinking of dropping quant, don't drop quant entirely. Do numbers, arithmetic, and algebra at least, so that you are covered just in case you get questions from that. Okay. So yeah, we are done with the questions that I got on the form. So I'm going to give you some data points that you can keep with you. Firstly, this is CET 2021 score versus percentile. Okay, so what score in CET 21 corresponded to what percentile in CET 21? And the same score would have corresponded to what percentile in CET 2020. That is the data that you have here. So this is what you use to assess your mock performance. So if you get a lot of people had asked that question, right? I'm somewhere around 110, 120. So if you're at 110 in your mock, 110 in the actual CET corresponds to somewhere around 98 percentile. Okay. If you're at 120, it corresponds to somewhere around 98.8, 98.9 or 99 percentile. If you're at around 135, it corresponds to a score of 99.9. So that is like a good benchmark to keep it. Okay, so maybe you can keep this table with you and refer to this whenever required. Okay. All right, let me now take questions from the YouTube chat. So the question from Triggered Insan. Please answer topics we should focus more on apart from CAT. So apart from CAT, topics that you would have done, one is the abstract reasoning bit. Okay, so because abstract reasoning doesn't appear in most other exams, you will have to do abstract reasoning. Then syllogisms, because again, that doesn't come in CAT. You'll have to do LR caselets, slightly lengthy LR caselets. So your CAT preparation of LR would have helped you, would definitely help you in CET LR as well. But CET LR tends to be slightly lengthy. So work on the caselets. So abstract, syllogisms, LR caselets, definitely. And then all the small subtopics that are there in LR, like number series, alphabet series, input, output, directions, blood relations. A lot of these things don't appear in CAT, and that is why people don't prepare for it that way. So in CET, mostly you'll have to focus on LR and abstract reasoning because your CAT preparation would have covered your quant and verbal. So in these two areas, you don't have to do a lot of effort, but you'll have to put in some effort on your abstract reasoning and the logical reasoning. When to purchase mocks? You can purchase them right away. Siddhant, you don't have to wait for it. Adarsh, I'm having problem in parajumbles with time management while attempting the mock. Please suggest any strategy. So the improvement won't happen during the mock, as in if you don't practice parajumbles outside. So when you take a mock, your aim is to just solve that question, right? But you need to train yourself to solve it in a better manner, and that can happen only when you practice it offline. So offline, sit with questions, but try to do them faster. So today, if I'm doing parajumble practice, I will still time myself. I will start the timer and see how much time on average I take for a parajumble question, and then try to reduce that time. So identifying the mandatory pair, using pronouns, right? So how do you eliminate that? Okay, this cannot be the starting line. This should not be the ending line, for example. And then working out. So approaching it as a LR thing rather than a parajumble. Because see, you have 5 sentences or 4 sentences. You just have to find the sequence. Now there is a logic to it. There is a flow to it. There is a structure to it. So if you're able to identify that, you're okay. So treat it as a LR thing that I have to arrange these 4 things in a logical manner more than parajumbles. Okay, so parajumbles is not verbal. I mean, there is an aspect of verbal, but most of it is actually logical reasoning. But yeah, I understand they can be a little irritating. So you have to work with the possibility that you will not have 100% accuracy in parajumbles, because most of the students that I've seen will not have 100% accuracy. Suggestions on syllogisms. So there are, of course, rules. So you have to know, when you say all A are B, what are the drawings that you can do? So what is the meaning of all A are B, right? So can A and B be equal in this case? The answer is yes. Can A be a subset of B? The answer is yes. Okay. So you have to know those diagrams really well, and then you should be good at identifying possibilities. So don't reject possibilities just like that. Syllogisms is not very difficult, but you will need, I would say, an exposure of about 40-50 questions to reach a comfortable level. Strategies for a mixed paper pattern, SM, it's going to be 30 minutes, 40 questions. So try to go through at least 40 questions in every 30-minute block. And then at the end, if there is any time left, you would have identified questions that are still doable, and you spend time on those. So going fast initially always works in a test like CET. So initial 1.5 hours is very, very crucial because that is when you will cover most of the ground. Okay. So last year, for example, the first 1.5 hours, I was almost done with 125 questions, right? So anybody who follows the strategy that I have would have been able to reach that thing, because those 3 areas apart from LR were not painful to manage. LR was kind of painful. So then the remaining 60 minutes, I had 75 questions to tackle. But then I was able to, I think, do around 35 out of those, not more than that, because LR was irritating. Can we get discounts on Ims Mocks if we group buy? No. So there are no group discounts that we offer on the test series. First of all, it's a very competitively priced thing. I don't really think it needs any sort of discounts. See, valuable things, you will typically not have heavy discounts on those. So best material for practice. There's no one best material when it comes to CET. I would say that if you're doing your entire IMS material plus IMS mocks, you should be good enough to handle CET, because most of the people are able to do it. But then there's no such thing as best material, not even for CET, not for CAT, not for anything in life. MBA CET, do they look at 10th and 12th standard marks? No, they don't look at it. Graduation is from open university. Is that okay for Maharashtra CET? I think yes. It should not be a problem as long as it's a recognized university. What is the difference between MAT and CET? So Komal, MAT is conducted 4 times a year. It has a different format. It has 5 sections, unlike CET, and there's negative marking. Okay, so those are the major differences. Topics wise, I think the only difference in MAT is the GK section, but otherwise, whatever prep that you would have done for CET would also help you to crack MAT. Can we skip critical reasoning? Krishna, yes, you can skip critical reasoning if you want to, but I suggest that you don't do that, because even within critical reasoning, you will sometimes see easy questions. So rather than skipping the entire thing, always do the bare minimum that is required. Is this a recorded session? RK, no, this is not a recorded session. Krishna, abstract reasoning, not scoring more than 17. 17 on 25 is not bad to begin with. If you're able to push this beyond 20, great. So more practice is the only answer for this. Can we add some more puzzles on MyMS? There are very few puzzles on MyMS where to look for more puzzle practice. See, if you look at all the material, the hard copy books, plus the online questions, plus the test series, I think you have enough number of questions. If you want to have more practice, I can only suggest that you enroll for one more mock test series. So that's going to be my response to this, because there are books in the market, but I don't know how good they are, because one, I never used them. Two, never really had the opportunity to even review the books. So I will say that you focus on maybe enrolling for one more mock test series. Okay. JBIMS MHRD entrance test. Okay, so Bhavya, the entrance is not very difficult based on the reviews that I've heard of the test, and any preparation that you have done for any other competitive exam should be sufficient for it. Okay, so it's not going to be very, very different or difficult for that matter. But yeah, I think closer to the test date, maybe we'll plan to do something, maybe an online session or some video that might help you to crack it. Okay, but otherwise, prep wise, I don't think any massively different thing you will have to do. In CT21, set-based questions like puzzles, DI were scattered. Not really. There were only very few instances where it happened, and but otherwise they appeared in set. Okay, so I think your information is maybe coming from that one or two places where it happened, but otherwise set-based questions appeared one after the other. Best material for practice, I've already answered this. How to improve from 70 to 100? First of all, understand that 70 to 100 is not going to be overnight. Okay, so from 70, the next target to keep is 75 or 80. From there, target 85 or 90, and from there you target 100. And as I've said, the strategy is always simple. The questions that you're attempting, you know those questions, and that is where you got those correct. The remaining questions are more important. So if you're scoring 70, what are the remaining 130 questions? Why are you not solving them? Is it because they're lengthy? Is it because your accuracy is bad? Is it because you don't know it? What is this, right? So you have to be very clear on those remaining questions, and then identify areas, work on them, and that is the only way you can improve. In CMAT, quant was difficult for me. Same is happening with CET as well. What should I do? Are your concepts sorted? That's the first thing that you need to ask yourself. That see, if your concepts are clear, even if I increase the difficulty of the question, you will still be able to do it. You might take more time to reach at the answer, but you'll be able to solve a twisted question if your concepts are clear. So are your concepts clear in the first place? If they are not, identify the areas where you can clear those out very quickly, and then focus on that. Numbers, arithmetic, algebra. Keep that as your priority, and then work on the other areas. Okay. Is it good to join any crash course now? Maybe. I mean, I would leave that completely up to you. See, because when it comes to preparation, right? Any course for that matter, whether it is like a long duration course or a short duration course, depends on what you do with that. Okay, so it's not really the duration. So you can still join a crash course and do extremely well in CET if you are putting the effort. Whereas somebody who just joins the crash course in the hope that it is going to solve the problem, the person might be disappointed. Okay, so course is one aspect of the entire preparation. What do you do with that? That is more important. So to answer your question, I think you can still join it, but then you'll have to put in a lot more effort if you're starting your preparation just now. Number of hours to put in daily or number of questions to practice daily. See, with CET, because the difficulty of the questions is slightly lower, right? You can still do about 100 questions a day. So I would typically recommend people to do about 100 questions, which should take you somewhere around 2 hours to do. Okay. So yeah, minimum of 2 hours of prep with about 100 questions on a daily basis. Vipul, practice strategy for puzzles. So one is work a lot on understanding whether something is doable or not doable. So if I show you a set and you read it once, at the end of reading, you should know, should I do it or should I not do it? That's the most important skill. And once you start doing it, at what point you should quit? That is the second important skill. So these two skills are important. Because practice, so I think everybody will have similar approach to solve most of the questions. So if I give you 8 people sitting around a circular table, right? So everybody has the same approach, right? Everybody will draw a circle, do 8 symmetrical sitting arrangements. We'll start with a particular point and then start placing others. The approach is not changing from person A to person B. But then once you read it, if you clearly see that there's a problem with this set, that it's not only 8 people who are sitting, but there is blood relation also that these 8 people have. Maybe it's not a good idea to touch it. But if it is just purely 8 people and somebody's to the left of somebody and right of somebody, opposite of somebody, definitely I'll solve that. So understanding what is solvable, what is not solvable, and at what point you leave a set is very important. VRC, what to do? Read. So read as much as you can on a daily basis, at least 30, 45 minutes, an hour. You should do normal reading from newspapers or from articles, and then specific preparation. So preparing for RC, preparing for parajumbles, preparing grammar, doing bit of vocab practice. So see, VRC has very limited areas. You need to understand that RC is an area. You can prepare, the concept preparation of RC is maybe a day. Beyond that, it's just practice. Okay. So it's more about practice than anything else. Can we give Ims Mocks at centers? Absolutely. But you will have to check with the nearest center as to availability of machines for taking mocks. SM, my mock scores fluctuate heavily. What do I do? I've scored 144, then 124, then 130, then 120. The scores are going to fluctuate. I would say the baseline is very, very important. So if you're saying that you also scored 120, let me take 120 as your baseline. So you should know that even on a bad day, I will not fall below 120. If the paper comes out to be difficult, you should still know that I'm going to get at least a 120 in this paper. Now, answering your question, that the variation, as long as it is not too much. Okay, so see, 120 to 144 is not bad, because it's like a 24, 25 point range. I would have been surprised if it was something like 100 and then a 150. That's a huge fluctuation, because then that means that a 150 paper was actually a very easy test, because otherwise your score is 100. So I'll say take a median score of all the mocks that you've got. That looks like a more or rather better estimate of what your current ability is. How many mocks should I attempt? 20 of IMS should be enough. But if you are hungry for more, then one more mock test series is sufficient. So total of maybe 30 to 40. Again, depends on your own hunger, the need, first of all. Because see, I always give this example of my friend from JB who had not taken a single mock. And he was not kidding. Okay, so it's not that he was lying about it just to show off or something. He was somebody who was like genuinely smart. He had a 99.95 in CAT, and he hadn't prepared anything for CET. He just showed up and got a 99.99 in CET. I've seen very rare talent like that. So that's why I don't rely on that strategy. Most of the students, 20 mocks is good enough, 20 with thorough analysis. But if you need more, because I've also seen people who have taken more mocks, 30, 35, 40 is like a good number. Okay, I was somewhere between 35 to 40 mocks, I think. Input-output questions. There are different kinds of input-output questions. So once you read a question, read the input, read step 1, read the output, and then see if you're able to find the logic. If you find the logic immediately, solve it. If you don't find the logic, don't get into it. That's the simplest strategy. Generally, you will get either 1 or 2 input-output questions, which is 5 questions or 10 questions. So it's still okay to skip it. But you should not skip it if you spot the logic. If you don't spot the logic, just skip it. The approaches differ from question to question, because see, there are some input-output questions which is a single movement. So there is a left to right movement, or there's a right to left movement, and singular. Sometimes there are multiple movements. So there's a combined left to right and right to left movement. So there are 2 objects moving in the same step. Sometimes the logics are like very, very random. So how many vowels are present in that word, and basis that the words are getting arranged. Now, the logic might not strike you in the exam. So if the logic strikes, you do it. If it doesn't strike, you don't do it. So I always say this, CET is about what you solve, but CET is also about what you don't solve. So if you make the right decisions that I'm not going to solve this, it's okay. So you have to be somebody who understands that in the first place. Except my genuine attempt at CET, which was in 2009, when I was a student like you guys, I have never done more than 190 questions in CET. Okay. So the last 2 years, both the years I had a 99.94, and I was not able to attempt more than 160, 170 genuine questions. So even with 160, 170 genuine questions, you can get a score of 135, 140, but your accuracy has to be that good then. When I was a student, I had attempted nearly 195 questions genuinely, had a score of 163 from that, right? But that was because I was like a genuine student. Now I'm not, so it doesn't matter. But then the point is, you don't have to attempt the entire paper. If you're able to identify this is something that I should not do, you are better off. JBIMS MHRD program, 60 out of 100 questions are based on group dynamics, individual behavior. You won't be able to prepare for a lot of this. If you still want, I think reading a book on organizational behavior should help. Maybe you can check out a book by an author called Robbins, or there are other books also in the market. So if you just pick any random book, I think you should still be okay. But a lot of these questions are behavioral questions, and you won't be able to prepare for it. My accuracy is not good. What effect on percentage? I didn't get the question, RK. But your accuracy can't be less than 80, 85 overall, as I said, because in CET, I'm talking about your genuine attempts, right? So if you're attempting whatever 160, 170 questions, then out of 160 questions, at least 128 should be correct, 80% accuracy, right? What should be the actual score versus the actual plus Tukka score? Our Tukka plus actual score is 140. So what should be the non-fluke score? That is why in your current mock, you should not be attempting anything random. I don't know how many few people are marking all 200 questions. It's a very stupid idea, by the way. So let me be blunt and tell you that it's a stupid idea to attempt all 200 questions right now. Please don't mark 200 questions. Only solve genuine questions right now. Once the month of June starts, and we know that the CET is going to happen in whatever those days on June, whatever mocks you do in June, you start marking all 200 questions. But till then, just solve genuine attempts. That's it. Because that will tell you what are the questions that you don't know, what is the accuracy from the questions you know. Okay. So no tukkas till May end. I get very less marks in verbal ability. What should I do? Read. See, the biggest problem with VRC is that it's a function of reading. The more you read, you will automatically start getting better at it. Okay. And 30, 45 minutes, 60 minutes daily, you have to read. And then only you'll start seeing some improvement. Does profile matter during placements at JB? To an extent, yes. So companies that come will have some sort of criteria. So if your profile doesn't meet it, then you might not get a shortlist from those companies. But the criteria varies from organizations to organizations. So it's very difficult to say whether somebody's profile is good or bad. If you're, I think, more than 85 throughout or more than 80 throughout, I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I don't think you should worry too much about profile. Okay. Vijay, whenever I sit for studying, suddenly a thought of poor past academic record comes in my mind, which makes me think, if the efforts I'm putting are worth, will I be able to good placement? Honestly, most of the recruiters don't look at your academic record. So there are very few companies who will be very strict when it comes to academic requirements. So there are companies who will come on campus, especially if you look at JB, where they will say that, okay, we'll interview only the top 10 students, okay, or we'll interview only the top 20 students. There are companies like that, but a lot of companies will have very lenient sort of approach towards shortlisting candidates. Okay, so see, if you don't have great academic records so far, the only way to rectify that situation is get into your MBA program and focus on your academics. So don't do anything else. Even if you don't do any extracurricular activity, you should be okay. But then just get your academics out. So try to be in the number, maybe top 5 or top 10 people in your batch, right? Who is stopping you from doing it? So whatever has happened in your life so far should not really restrict what you're supposed to achieve in the rest of it. Please tell puzzle strategy. I don't have a puzzle strategy. If I see that it is solvable by me in some nice 5-7 minutes, I'll solve it. If I see that it is too much of an effort, I'll not do it. That's it. So that is my strategy. Scoring 100 to 110 with 150 genuine attempts in mock. Should I mark flukes also? Should I continue with genuine attempts only? Others continue with genuine attempts only till May end. Please tell your mock performance. Okay, so you're asking me about my mocks when I was a student, because I have not taken mocks after that. There was no requirement. So when I was a student and taking CET for the first time, and I was taking mocks, I was scoring in the range of 110, 115 to 130. The first mock that I took, I got a 130, but after that, my performance was either dropping or increasing a bit, but not really going beyond a 135 or something like that. In the actual test, I ended up getting 136 or 137 that year, which was around 99.36 or 37. And yeah, that was the first time. The second time when I decided to take CET and I started taking mocks, I was averaging around 150, 155, with maximum scores being around 170, low being around 140, 135-ish. So, but average was like 150, 155. So that is how my prep journey was. How to increase accuracy? Practice. So there's no substitute to that, right? I mean, see, your accuracy will only increase if you identify the questions that are worthy of solving and solve them nicely. Okay, so I'm very see, the way things have or rather things that I've learned from test taking is what not to do. Okay. Because coverage wise, see, everybody will have the same, more or less same content, exposure wise. So say somebody, Adarsh here and Rohit here and Sudhir here, if all of you are taking IMS material, all of you have the same content access, right? But then understanding what to solve, what not to solve in the actual test is going to separate people. So whenever you're taking mock, focus on that skill. When I read a question, I'm very clear I'm doing it right now or I'm not doing it in the paper. So you have to really get good at that particular art, I would say. Something for grammar, any books. So IMS material, if you're an IMS student and you've already started attending classes and all of that. If not that, I think any book on grammar should do. Okay, I don't really have a particular favorite. Ren and Martin, I think, makes it very, very simple. Too simplistic, I would say. So unless your grammar is in shambles, you would not need Ren and Martin. If you're not done grammar at all, maybe in your school also you sort of somehow survived without doing grammar, then I think Ren and Martin. But otherwise, there is a book. It might be a little expensive. So if you find like a PDF version of it somewhere, see if you can get access to it. It's a book called SAT Grammar by Erika Meltzer. Okay, my favorite book when it comes to grammar for a test like CET. So SAT Grammar by Erika Meltzer. And please don't buy it because it's going to be very expensive. If you can find maybe questions from the book or like a PDF of the book somewhere, you are good to go. Okay. Otherwise, even if you don't refer to that book, you will still be okay. But then do your mocks well, do your IMS material well. Our CET dates postponed. I have confirmed my seat in one of the college and paid nearly 8 lakhs. Now the situation is worse. Shall I cancel my admission or take in college with low fees? Number one, don't cancel your admission that you've got. Okay. You cannot depend on CET. Let me put that in bold, italics, put a box around that thing. You cannot depend on CET. CET, the last several years, especially the last year, it has been destroyed by the unpredictability, right? The way it is conducted in terms of structure, the last year change, right? I mean, who would have predicted that? Nobody. So you can't take chances with that. How would you take chance on 2.5 hours of your life, right? I mean, I wouldn't do that. So the story that I told you, right, that even though I was averaging 150, 155 mocks, and I had a 99.99 in math, so I knew that I was getting into JBIMS. My CET was done in Feb because earlier when I was a student, CET used to happen in Feb. I had got an admit at NMIMS and I had paid my first year fees there. Okay. In spite of knowing that my CET has gone there. Because you never know, right? Ultimately, it's a relative thing at the end of the day. So you would have done well, but what if there are 100 others who have done better than you? So then you're gone, right? So you can't take chances. I would say don't cancel your admission. Wherever you have paid 8 lakhs, the college that you have got, right? Mostly the college will start in June, July. Okay. Now you take CET and see what happens. There are two possibilities. One, you get a really great institute through CET, in which case you will have to take a call whether should I forget my 8 lakhs that I have paid, because there will be some cancellation policy also in your college as to by what date you can cancel. CET admission process is going to be extremely delayed. Let's say you get JBIMS, cancelling your admission from this current college is still okay because you have paid 8 lakh, which I believe is your first year fees. So 2-year combined would have been 16 lakh. Let's say you get JBIMS, cancelling your admission still makes sense because your MBA is getting done in 8 plus 6, 14 lakhs. You're still better off. But if you get equally okay-ish college, right? So you've got one institute right now where you're paid 8 lakh, you're getting a similar institute through CET. There's no point switching. The third possibility is you get a worse college from CET, in which case you are still covered because you have an admit here. So please don't cancel your admission. What was my prep journey like? Just solved a lot of questions. Was very clear as to what I wanted from day one, that I wanted to be in top 20 institutes. It didn't happen when I took exams for the first time because even I didn't have clarity in terms of what is required to crack the test. I learned it from those exams, and the second year I just went berserk in terms of preparation. As I said, I had taken somewhere between 35 to 40 mocks. I had that book where I had written all my scores and all, but somewhere it got lost, or I think gave it away to Raddiwala or something. I don't remember. But I lost that book, and then I don't remember exactly how many mocks I had taken. But that book had every single mock, how many attempts, section wise, what were my scores, and so on. Okay. Is Tukka strategy good? Definitely, everybody will mark all 200 questions in CET. Even I do. So if I solve 165, 170 genuine questions, I'll mark all the remaining 30 questions so that all 200 questions are marked. But you cannot count on those random marks that you have done. So on a good day, you might get, say, 30 attempts. Let's say you do 30 Cs. You reach 170, the remaining questions, all 30, you mark C. On a good day, you might get maybe 10 or 15 questions correct. But on a bad day, you might not get anything correct. Maybe reasonably, you can expect, say, 5-6 marks out of it. So you can't count on your tukkas. My quant is weak. Which topic should I focus on? As I've already mentioned, numbers, arithmetic, algebra. Those 3 areas you have to do extremely well. Is it possible to contact me directly? So one is you can leave a comment on the blog, and that way I can respond to you. Otherwise, you can reach out to the, since you said that you are from IMS Ahmedabad, just connect with somebody there and see if your queries get cleared. If you still need help, then I think you can reach out to me through the blog or on YouTube. I think I'll be very happy to answer the questions. Critical reasoning accuracy is low. What should I do? Practice. So see, for everything, the answer is practice. So you practice. But there are some areas in critical reasoning where you can improve. And there are some areas which typically you'll not be able to improve. So for example, I think in critical reasoning, one of the easier things to get better at is, or rather something which is very tricky is assumptions, right? So what assumption is valid and so on. Conclusions are, I think, a little easier to get better at. So you figure out which one you are good at, which one you are not good at. Assumption, inference, conclusion, strengthening argument, weakening argument. These are the areas. Out of this, what is it that you can get better at? Overall, I always work with the assumption that my accuracy is going to be 60% in this area. If I attempt 5 questions of CR, I'm getting 3 questions correct. Now, if I attempt 5 questions of QA, I'm getting mostly 5 correct. So 5 questions there, 3 questions here. Out of 10, I'm getting 8 correct. I have a balance. CET is more about finding that balance than trying to push yourself in every single thing, because it might not be possible. NMIMS Pharma, I think it's a very good option. I mean, if you're very clear that you want to do Pharma MBA, I think Bhavya is a good option to continue in. NMIMS is a good brand. So always account for the fact that CET has unpredictability and you can't depend on it. So take CET for sure, but continue with your NMIMS Pharma for now, is what I would recommend. What makes me calm? In the exam, if you're asking, I think it's just the entire experience of all these years. Because see, I don't take mocks the way you guys do as preparation for the test. Rather, I go as if that, okay, if I've not done anything right, then what is like my natural aptitude? So it's more like fun for me. So that's why it doesn't matter. I will always remain calm in the test. But yeah, there are moments of panic. So it's not that I will not panic during the test. There would be instances where I would be making some silly mistakes. I remember one particular cat, when I was doing 13 into 8 is 91. I did that twice. So I solved the question. I was like, the answer is not matching. Then I solved it again. The answer is not matching. The third time I realized that I've been writing 13 into 8 is equal to 91. So you will panic in some situations, you'll make mistakes. But finding your balance, right? That knowing that what is the baseline. So I know that even on a difficult CET, on a very bad day also, I will not fall below a certain level in terms of my accuracy, because I'll be able to identify questions that are difficult and I'll not touch those questions. Okay. I covered almost 90% topics, but still not able to attend same because I get stuck in questions which I'm not able to attend. That is the art, right? AC. This is the art that you need to learn. So whatever mocks that you're taking, after the mock, you should, when you're doing your analysis, you should ask yourself, oh, this question I got stuck. Why did I even touch it in the first place? Why did I spend so much time on it, right? So the next time you see a similar question, it will remind you that, okay, you had made that mistake last time. Let's not get into that. Okay. For all India candidate, what is the best score? For all India, because the cutoff is 99.95, looking at the last 2 years, you have to aim for at least a 138. Okay. So that is the last 2 year data. Last year, you would have needed 140 plus. Best of CET series, please have a look at that. So it's a good series. So we have covered all the important topics. So if you go through it, you will get some insights because Shashank, Kumud, and I have solved all the questions. So we have brought in the approaches that we would have taken to solve those questions in the actual test. Okay, Rohit, so strategy is very simple. If it is a sectional thing, you decide your order beforehand. You practice that in your mocks, that this is going to be my distribution of time and attempts, and that's going to be the section order. If it is a jumbled thing, 30 minutes, 40 question, always try to reach an attempt of 40 in 30 minutes. Okay, so out of 40, you might not be attempting all 40. Maybe 35 you attempted or 30 you attempted. But knowing your baseline accuracy, attempts, and possible chance to come back to some questions, you need to figure things out. Invincible, I'll have to see what the error is. I suggest that you just connect with the nearest center. They will be able to help you out with the enrollment if you are not able to do it on your own for some reason. Which book should I go for logical and abstract reasoning? I don't know. I've seen a lot of students use R.S. Agarwal. Personally, I've never used it. It has a lot of questions, but I have not used it. So I don't know how good or bad it is. But I've seen students do it, so there's no harm in doing it. After the mock, I could see that I can solve the questions which went wrong, what to do during the mock. See, everything is a matter of learning from whatever mistakes that you're making. Right? Sometimes, even with the questions that you have done in the past correctly, you might end up making some silly mistakes. But then that's okay, because you would have identified some other areas where you can score higher, right? So mistakes are bound to happen. There's nobody who can say that, okay, I'll get all 100% of the questions that I do correctly. So during the test, you just try to minimize those mistakes as much as possible. And see, in my case, for example, when I see an LR caselet, the first instinct that I have is let me not do it. So I will not touch a caselet, even if it looks doable, before I have exhausted all the other caselet, all the other non-caselet questions. So have I done all blood relation, series, input output, logical puzzles, some other things like counting number of triangles in a figure? I would do all of those before I do caselet. But some people would have different strategy. They will solve questions that come their way. So everybody has a different way to, I think, crack it. Okay, I'll just take a few more questions because we have already exceeded the allotted time significantly. I got 75 to 80 marks in every mock, only LR abstract DI without verbal QA. How can I improve? Not a good strategy, first of all, because see, verbal and QA, verbal especially is one area where you can solve more questions in lesser time. So if you look at your LR, to solve 75 questions of LR, you will need at least 75 minutes. But to do 50 questions of verbal, most of the students will not need more than 50 minutes. Okay. So verbal has a good return on the time invested. That is why you should always do it. Secondly, QA is one area where the accuracy tends to be higher, because you will solve a question only if you know it, right? I mean, why would you solve it otherwise? So that is why I think you are missing out on two very important areas. So study them and then start taking mocks. Which book did I use? I didn't use any books per se. I relied mostly on the institute material and mocks. Because see, when you're taking 35-40 mocks, right, you're already looking at what, 7,000 questions, which is a huge number. So you don't really need a book. JBMS, MHRD, see, honestly, you will not need any preparation. I mean, I don't know any of the students who have prepared for that particular test, because what will you prepare for, right? So you can prepare for quant, LR, verbal, DI. How can you prepare for behavioral questions? How can you prepare for a question which is assessing your understanding of how do you work in teams? A lot of it is going to come from experience. So most of the times you have to just think the question through properly and then answer it. If you still want to prepare, as I've said, just go through some books on organizational behavior. I think that should be sufficient. Okay. How to approximate in DI where options are very close. Even if you calculate, it becomes tedious, especially in Ims Mocks. See, sometimes you will have to calculate it exactly. Sometimes you can work with approximations. So look at the question and look at how close the options are. If the options are very close, maybe it's not a good idea to get into solving that set, especially if it is a calculation intensive set. But if the options are like very distant, then you can approximate. See, for example, if I give you something like a 278 point something, right, into 31 point something. Okay. Now, what approximation do I do to get to this answer? Because I can always do a 278 into 32. But depending on how close the options are, even a 275 into 30 might work to be a good approximation. So I should practice a little bit in terms of understanding what is the impact of a certain approximation on my calculation. How much is it changing the answer? So if I give you, say, 9 into 9, right, 81, everybody knows that. But if you approximate that to 10 into 10, it's a significant increase in terms of percentage, because you're doing 11% plus 11% plus 11 into 11 by 100% sort of a change. So that is why it's not a good idea to approximate 9 to 10. If your other number is also a 9 and you're approximating that to 10. But if you're multiplying 9 with 9999, okay, and then you're approximating one of them to 9, from 9 to 10, then the impact is much higher if you had changed 9999 to 10,000. So understanding this, which number should I increase? Which number should I decrease? What is the impact on the actual answer? Is my computed answer more or less than the actual answer? Are you able to understand that? Then great. So practice this thing. It will take some time, but not rocket science. Okay, some last few questions. I got 93 marks in my first mock without prep. Will I be able to cover up in 50 days and score 165? So see, one is, it's a good place to be in if you're getting 93 without any prep. Okay, it's, I think, a very good position to start. Whether you will be able to bridge the gap or not depends on a lot of parameters. Number one, natural aptitude. Number two, how much you can push your natural aptitude in the remaining time. Number three, how fast you are. Number four, how many questions you solve. Number five, how many mocks you take. Number six, what happens on the D-Day. How do you maintain your temperament, your decisions on the D-Day, whole lot of things. So very difficult for anybody to predict your future. Okay. But without hesitation, you should just put in the effort. See, when I was a student like you guys, right, the only clarity that we had was that a score of 155 plus or 150 plus is what you need for JBIMS. So the entire year, whatever I was doing for CET, my focus was very clear that I have to score that much. A lot of students get caught in this thing that there are very few seats. There are only 5 seats for my category. There are only 10 seats for my category, and so on. अरे उससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है? How many seats do you need? You need only one seat, right? So why are you worried about how many seats are there in your category? You need one seat. You worry about that. You focus on your own attempt without any hesitation and worrying. You just prepare. Which exam pattern will you have, 2020 or 21? I don't know. Be prepared for both of them. That's it. Which grammar book I had mentioned? Shreyas has written that. So it's SAT grammar by Erika Meltzer. Okay, Meltzer. Are IMS mocks of same level of CET or higher? Will IMS add new pattern jumble mock? So see, what we are doing is we always try to keep it very close to the actual level. And we sometimes also make it slightly more difficult than CET, so that just in case the paper comes difficult, you are not at loss of ideas what to do. See, the problem with making an easy paper is that all of you will feel happy in the short term, but you will suffer in the long term. If I make the paper easy, I am making you suffer in the short term, but you are better off in the long term. Okay, so that's the way we approach it. If the paper pattern is same as last year, do you think 150 plus is a good score to target? Absolutely. I mean, 150 is always a fantastic score to have in any format. So old format, new format doesn't matter. As you see, right, CET 2020, the last column, that was the old format. CET 21 was aberration, randomness. So even then, both cases, 150 would have been sufficient. I mean, 138 should have sufficed both the years. 136 should have sufficed both the years. So in which mock you got 93 marks without preparation? Okay, I think you're asking somebody else. So I don't know who you're asking, but anyway. I got GDPI call from SRCC GBO, which is scheduled on 8 May. I'm now confused whether to go for it or focus on CET. Definitely go for it. SRCC GBO has really good return on investment. The only college through the Maharashtra CET that has a similar placement is Sidnam, and better is JB. So the question shouldn't even be asked. Just go for SRCC GBO. Okay. All right. I think we are more or less done. If there are any more questions, just put it in the comment section of this video once it is there on YouTube, and I will get back to you guys. Okay. So we are almost at 9. I think we should wrap it up here. Thank you everybody for joining. I hope you had fun. I had fun answering all the questions, and hope you got to learn a couple of things from here that you can implement in your strategy. So thank you so much for joining. Wish all of you all the best. Stay safe, take care of yourself, and keep preparing. Okay. All the best. Bye.